Good late Tuesday, early Wednesday, meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving you a look at that Doppler technology here across the region. We do have some showers here, even, in toward the wee hours, really, as you're looking toward parts of Clay, St. Johns counties, and nothing really, significant, but, definitely interesting to hear. We get some of that back on that Tuesday, a little bit more in terms of the way of some downpours. Again, nothing overwhelming there, but getting some of that to come off of the ocean, and also seeing rip current risk there be high across our region, and it's going to still be an issue here as we're looking ahead. So be careful if you're going to the beaches. Be very careful because that can be deadly. Rip currents can be deadly, so got to keep that in mind. But do have some shower action. We haven't had a lot of it around lately. I mean, we had about a third of an inch here toward where I'm at in eastern Bradford County back on that Tuesday. But as you're looking here toward the temperatures right now, you do see 60s in a lot of areas, but there are some 70s on the board here too. So that's something to see here. It's pretty warm for this time of year, quite honestly. Where I'm at, we're at 69 degrees. It's actually gone up a little bit here, and this pattern is, making it a little bit harder to get as cool as it otherwise could get here. With that moisture around, as you're looking at things. Go ahead and put real quick the infrared satellite on. I'll take the radar technology off, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put on that satellite. And it's harder to see, but there's at least some cloud cover around, so got to keep that in mind. Overcast conditions to some degree here as we're looking at things. So worth noting, of course, as we're tracking the situation. Again, just trying to give you that overview. I also want to talk about here the National Weather Story, because that's something that could be pretty substantial as we look ahead. And I even have to cut in here later on that Wednesday, later today at this point, because there is a threat for some significant severe weather as we're looking toward parts of Oklahoma and Kansas especially, but even getting into a little bit of it looks like Nebraska and Missouri here at this point. That area there, that area which would show up as hatched on the SBC Outlook, the latest update just came in. Waiting for this a little bit. That's why we're coming on a little bit later. I know you see some lightning, and let me put on the Doppler here right now. You do see some action, but the overnight action we're not terribly concerned about. There could be some rogue warnings, but the concern is for later on that Wednesday here. I mean, you see the temperature contrast. We're going to have some different weather makers come into play here. You see some gusty winds, but I'll go ahead and take off the local storm reports, the lightning here, even the current temperature, because I want to focus on this. We haven't had this in a while here. I mean, honestly, the last hatched area in the country for tornadic potential, I would, guess would have been Milton and toward areas in Florida with that a few weeks ago, which is very rare for that area. This area is not so rare at all for this. It's tornado outlet to some degree, but you don't get it too often here in late October. It definitely can happen, though. It definitely has happened before this time of year. It's just, the pattern definitely does support that as we're looking here at things because of the warm temperatures in play. But strong tornadoes possible from generally in the northern parts of Oklahoma, so give or take around Fairfax in Oklahoma, Hominy, Bartlesville. Granted, there probably won't be too many strong tornadoes, but there could be a few somewhere within this region that extends pretty far up. We're talking about Winfield, Kansas. You see Coffeyville. I know they had some bad flooding years ago. You can see Howard there, getting up toward Burlington. Emporia's in there. Garnet, Ottawa, Osage City, Lawrence, the University of Kansas there. We're talking about the Jayhawks there under this. Manhattan to the left, so Kansas State University there under this as well. So just continuing to track things here very carefully as we're giving you guys the latest information. Of course, Topeka is in there, so it's a pretty highly popular area. Could have a strong tornado in and around that vicinity. Again, there probably won't be that many. It's just somewhere within that big area. There could be one or two or three, give or take. You have 2+ tornadoes. You see even the western Kansas City metro included. St. Joe's up in Missouri, so it's a pretty big hatched area for this time of year. You don't see that all that often. So I keep referencing EF2 plus tornadoes. So you might be wondering, what do I mean by that here? As I really haven't dealt with severe weather in this part of the country, this level, this high of an enhanced type of risk in a while. I mean, months, I would say. I know we've been busy with the hurricane season down here in our local area, but that type of risk we haven't really seen in a while. A lot of drought conditions. Some areas need the rain, but the lightning you don't need. You got to keep that in mind too. But considerable damage possible from some tornadoes here, so got to be really careful later on that Wednesday there. Generally, that area I was showing you, but I'll go ahead and jump back and just see the broad risk area now. This is just the latest information off the presses here, pretty much hot off the presses from the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. And you can see here, as we're tracking things, there is a area of dark green. That's a marginal 1 out of 5 risk. The yellow area is a 2 out of 5 risk, and that orange is a 3 out of 5 severe weather risk for that Wednesday here. So you got to be aware the tornado risk is greatest in the brownish color, but still could get tornado watches, especially for that yellow color. More isolated in nature. In the green, hail not as big of a concern, but it's there. I know, then as we look here at a wind risk, you could have some, nasty wind action here getting into the Kansas City metro. And then as you see that strong tornado risk is in that zone there, we could have the EF2 or greater tornadoes here in some isolated instances. So got to be really careful, got to be really cautious here as we're looking at things on that national level. So let me go ahead and pull up some model guidance real quick and kind of break this down, as we kind of get into this here. Let's put up 2 o'clock Eastern, which is 1 o'clock Central. You don't really see the threat in the area that's at, greatest risk yet, but as I kind of advance this here, so this is 2 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock Central, and by the way, as I talk about the time, remember this weekend we're going to move into those clocks 1 hour back, so you get an extra hour of sleep. It's time to change those batteries and the smoke alarms, weather radios, and the like. But as you see, we start getting maybe some isolated tornado threats here later in the afternoon. But, as you get into the more this line here, that's what's showing them more definitively. But some of the stuff's broken, which could lend itself to a tornado risk here as we're tracking the scenario. So you just got to be really careful here as we're tracking this. You just gotta be kind of mindful of that here as the scenario does move along. As we're seeing the storm mode here, there'll be a concern. That's around 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock. We started to get a little more of a line. I mean, the tornado threat should start to go down, but that wind threat will still persist as it gets into Missouri there. And you see 3, 4 in the morning, give or take, moving across parts of that state. Now I'll move this over some. The threat's lower, but not completely zero for severe weather, even toward east central and southeast Missouri as we get closer towards sunrise on that Thursday. So that's something to keep in mind as we're, progressing this out. This is 9 a.m. Central Time on that Thursday morning. 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, 1 o'clock. I mean, the threat's a lot lower out here, but it's not zero. So keep that in mind as we're looking at that. I mean, we're not going to have that hold together over our area or anything like that, but it's interesting to see the progression there as we're looking at things, as we're trying to give you guys just the very latest weather information. Now let's get back to the tropics, though, because we do have some things to talk about there. I know, of course, Helene, it's now been a little over a month since this devastating, catastrophic storm struck the country and made landfall here toward our area. Part of our 62 counties getting that direct blow. Of course, it was just terrible in North Carolina, even more so than it was here in terms of the human toll. But there was a lot of destruction toward our region here as well. I mean, south of Interstate 10 there. I mean, as you're getting toward those coastal areas, especially, some homes just wiped away. But even around Valdosta was significant, up toward Douglas, significant there as well in that corridor. But, I mean, it's just going to be a storm, Keaton Beach there. Some of those beaches around there, they were just, broken apart here in a lot of ways. And It's going to take a long time, to be able to maybe rebuild the best of their ability at least. This was just so significant coming on through here. I can't ever forget what happened here. We had a Dahlia last year hit Taylor County. It was a Category 3. Debbie this year's a Category 1, but then this one a Category 4. And it was absolutely heartbreaking and caused damage, in Horseshoe Beach. This one did in Cedar Key. In some cases, a lot of cases, it was even worse than what, Historic Adalia did, which who would have thought we could have had something surpass that? I mean, and then we had Milton a couple weeks after. I mean, it hit further south, granted, but still, I mean, the hits just kept on coming during the hurricane season. And, just something that we're never going to forget about here. I talk about Debbie Cat 1, Cat 3 was Adalia last year, which was the historic storm on record, for that area. Now, even something worse this year hitting the Perry area and surrounding communities. Those coastal communities were the ones that just got wiped away. In some cases, with the catastrophic Category 4 storm, just so unbelievable to have an area that hadn't been hit that much by significant hurricanes over the years to have two very significant major hurricanes come through in just a little over a year span. Almost, just unthinkable. And sadly, the unthinkable happened. That unthinkable happened there as we were looking at things, as we were tracking the situation. Just crazy to, to have that happen as we're looking here at everything. Let's go ahead and jump back on over right now toward the graphics, I think, at this point in time. The other source and, just, looking at that, what a storm. So well defined, how together so far, and, killed so many folks, especially in North Carolina. Some of the mountain communities in North Carolina, I mean, it's, at least, I say it's unthinkable down here, but at least it is a, something you think that's in the realm of possibilities from a hurricane because you're in a coastal area. But those areas, I mean, very far inland, the mountain communities just wiped away as well in North Carolina and areas in Georgia. I mean, just so much damage as well. A lot of folks lost their life in and around the Augusta vicinity there because they just weren't used to winds like this and knocked down trees everywhere. And caused power disruptions everywhere. Helene, one for the record books, definitely gonna have that name retired. As we go ahead and see here, Patty and then Raphael, the next two names. Sarah after that. Now, and we do have to be careful here, not turn the logo red for alert mode or anything like that at this point. But we do have another system out here. I'm not going to really, get into it too much right now because the model guidance is all over the place. I mean, generally we at least have an idea. Honestly, the models kind of have no idea what this storm system is going to do right now. There's a decent chance it's not any concern. There's also, I think, this pretty decent chance it could, impact Florida in some form or fashion. I mean, it could get really strong and then weaken before it gets to Florida. I mean, there's other options that are on the table in between as well. I mean, we'll watch it. It's probably something that'd be at least a week, probably more, really. Probably, getting past election day before it would be something that would have a direct impact here on our local weather. But it's an odd pattern. I mean, it is November coming up, and that pattern here, generally doesn't favor too many hurricanes hitting Florida. We had Nicole a couple of years ago, Kate in 85, I think one going back a long time ago as well. But you don't generally get them November in Florida. I know Ada was a strong tropical system that was, a hurricane at points maybe around Florida, but that was, more in the Greek alphabet in 2020. Maybe we get a system like that one. That would almost be an analog there in a way, possibly. But, we're way, way far away on this. And, that's probably even giving, forecast too much credit here at this point, even making analog out of this because this is something really not sure what's going to happen with it. So we can't, put those supplies up quite yet. You still got to give it, let's say 3 more weeks here. Give or take. I mean, might have to extend that. Hurricane season goes for a little over a month, more here pretty much. I mean, in November, so pretty much a month as we're looking at things. But, you just gotta be, still watching, but we're not overly concerned right now, but don't let your guard down. So as you're looking here, chances of storms in the basin, Atlantic basin do drop off considerably, but don't let your guard down here. Of course, we're always on top of things for the 62 counties. I've been on for all the tornado warning storms over 5 years or so now, and we've been doing this, thing of cloud weather about 5 years in terms of the, updates here and the like now on digital platforms. So just thanks so much for tuning in, trusting me. As we see the rainfall forecast now, you can see a lot of rain. These areas do need rain toward Oklahoma. There's been a lot of drought in this area, but you gotta be careful. Don't have too much too quick either. And you don't want the severe weather that's looking to accompany this. So you got to keep that in mind as we're tracking things, as we're giving you guys the latest information. So you can see here, I mean, that's so in some areas getting upward of a half foot of rain over the next 7 days. Some of this, could fall pretty quick. So you got to be careful here as we're tracking the scenario that can cause some flash flooding. So I know go to cloudy.com/radar for an interactive look at things when we're not on the air here. And we have to cut in if things, take a turn in terms of like a tornado emergency or something toward the Midwest. I hope we don't get to that point, but it's not completely out of the question here as we're tracking things. So, I mean, but this is probably, this is really not just, talking about one, system. Some another system coming in here later in the period to add to these totals. So at least it's spread out a little more so that can, limit the flooding. But maybe 2 different rounds, give or take, of severe weather as we look ahead over the next week or so toward the Midwest. So keep an eye on that here. As we're tracking things, I know when there's tornado watch in play, that means conditions are favorable for tornadic activity. I expect, probably more than one of those really getting issued on that Wednesday toward the Midwest. So it's important to stay tuned for the latest into our devices. Have multiple ways to receive alerts. And when a tornado warning is issued, that means a tornado has been detected using radar or spotted. You want to try to avoid taking shelter in a mobile home. Get as many walls there between you and the outside as possible. The sturdy building is so important. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet, football helmet, baseball helmet, something like that. I know we will go to a lighter topic now, though, and talk about that college football playoff. We started putting some of this information out last week. And I wanted to go over the latest information based on the games played over the weekend. And you can see this is what I think it should be. The way things went last year, SEC really got the benefit of the doubt. With Alabama getting in, despite losing that game by double digits at home to Texas, they won the SEC title. I mean, they beat, Georgia in that game. They beat Georgia this year at Alabama, and they've lost 2 of their games. I mean, they're not even on the board right now, in my, assessment. I know other folks may look at it a little different, but I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt. They, lost that second game there as well. I mean, as we're looking at things to Tennessee, that's why Tennessee's, on the board at least. So the folks would have them way higher, but just think the SEC is not really, performing all that great in their games here as we're looking at things overall. I mean, you see Oregon there. I mean, that was an impressive win against Illinois last week. It was at home. But, being a top 25 team the way they did, and they struggled early in the year with Idaho. That was something that was, concerning. But Dylan Gabriel, and his team there, Dan Lanning's squad, I mean, doing really good work here in terms of those games. I mean, beating Ohio State, the Big Ten's looking like maybe it's starting to really become, at the moment, the premier football conference in the country. The SEC, had it really most years over the last, almost couple decades. I thought the ACC some years, the year FSU won the title in 2013, and maybe even a few years around there, it was kind of trying to really challenge for that, being the premier football conference, the way ACC teams like Clemson, did winning those couple titles, beating Alabama handily by 4 touchdowns in a title game, not, that many years ago, about a little less than a decade ago at this point. I mean, they won by 4 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence, as bad as the Jacksonville Jaguars, have been here lately, Trevor Lawrence beat a Saban coach team by 4 touchdowns to win a national title. So, the ACC has shown, this is why they needed that chance last year with FSU. FSU could have won a national title with Tate Rodemaker at quarterback. It wouldn't have probably been Brock Glenn. It would have been Tate Rodemaker. And FSU could have won that national title They've been a little tougher without Jordan Travis, obviously, but they weren't given that chance, and now FSU's 1-7 to just, the players kind of think, I mean, what's the point even trying? And granted, there's a lot of talent got lost from last year, as and coaches think, what's the point of even recruiting the guys if we're not going to get a chance? The recruits think, why do I want to go here? Because they're not going to let us in. They're going to be punished for winning all of our games pretty much. So anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and look at this here now. You can see Clemson, I have them at number 3. Cade Klubnik there, he won that ACC title in 2022 when FSU's, starting quarterback earlier in the year, DJ Uyunglele, he, got benched in that game. And Clemson there, was really, really good that year. Last year took a little bit of a fall downward, but really like how their roster is constructed in terms of this, not as many of the transfer portal and the like. BYU, I think right now they're the best in that conference, the Big 12. Then Penn State, that's a big game against Ohio State. In terms of some changes here, you can see Indiana here, as we're looking at things, I moved them up because, Ohio State barely beat Nebraska at home. Indiana beat them by many touchdowns. So you got to give them a lot of credit for that. And they even had a quarterback injury halfway through that game. So give them a lot of credit moving them up 2 spots. Texas struggled against Vanderbilt. They were on the road, and Vanderbilt is at least an average team. So I moved Indiana past them. But Ohio State, I mean, that was disappointing for them. But, that game against Penn State could be pretty big for them. Maybe even a little bit more so than Penn State in a way, because if Ohio State loses that, they really start to get closer to the bubble of the playoff. With 2, conference losses, it'd be hard to get into the conference title game. So we'll see what happens there. Iowa State, I have them as the second best, Big 12 team there. And I have them getting in, not an automatic bid or anything, but they're undefeated. Got to give them a lot of credit for that. Last year that was kind of lost. And that FSU, they were undefeated, didn't lose. Didn't have any adversity to have to try to rebound from. And yet they were told they couldn't go to the college football playoff. And then you see Pittsburgh there, number 2. I mean, they haven't lost. Neither has Miami. I mean, you got to put them in. Just like, they're not, this Miami team is not near as good as that FSU team last year was, in my assessment. But, because, Miami's been bailed out multiple times this year. I feel like, there's a decent chance they're going to lose. But if they, are undefeated or even have just 1 loss, you got to put them in. That's how things should go. You cannot put like a 2 or 3 loss SEC team ahead of them. You have to put, 1 loss Miami in over a 2 or 3 loss SEC team. Especially a 3 loss, but a 2 loss, even as well, I would say, unless there's just extenuating circumstances here. But, they'll be, pushed to potentially, have a team like Alabama try to sneak their way in here. You see Boise State, as you're looking here, the 5th best conference champion. So they had that last spot. And I have Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and SMU, my first 4 teams out in that order. Notre Dame did beat Texas A&M, so you can't just put Texas A&M in and leave Notre Dame out at this point. Granted, things should still, last year, you think, oh, they definitely will play their way out. And, well, somehow teams lost. FSU didn't lose. They weren't in. Teams that lost games. Texas, losing a game to Oklahoma, I believe it was. And then, of course, Alabama losing by double digits to Texas at home. And, those teams got the benefit of a doubt. Or a team that beat the Heisman Trophy winner that threw a Hail Mary this weekend in the NFL. Just crazy win. FSU beat them by many touchdowns in a neutral site. Orlando, but still a neutral site. And they were left out. They, did about the best job anybody against Jayden Daniels and LSU's, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback last year. And somehow FSU didn't get to go to the playoffs. They didn't have injuries on the defense. The quarterback, that was into the 3rd string quarterback last year, Brock Glenn, still won the ACC title game by, I think it was double digits. But as we go ahead and look here, SMU, you know, they almost lost to Duke. They only have one loss, though. If they would have lost, they'd obviously been out of this picture, but they're playing Pittsburgh this weekend. They're hosting Pittsburgh, I believe, the Pitt Panthers, and if SMU, you know, does end up winning that game, then they get even closer here. Pitt kind of falls behind them, probably. But, I mean, SMU had 6 turnovers. Duke didn't have any, and SMU still found a way to win that on the road. I mean, that's really sloppy play by SMU, and that's concerning. But if he can find a way to beat a halfway decent team like that on the road, despite being -6 in the turnover, you know, margin there, I mean, with that turnover margin, I mean, that's impressive in a weird way. So we're going to leave them at the same spot they were last week, but I do have Texas A&M, you know, taking LSU's spot here at this point. As we go ahead and look here, you can see that planning forecast. We're going to be watching the tropics maybe later on, but not too concerned about, you know, election day here in terms of the weather at this point. Looks pretty good, so that's good to see. I mean, this looks like a pretty good, but a little bit warmer than average type of forecast. You can see here 85 degrees on that Wednesday. 84 on that Thursday, 85 Friday, and that, you know, game there in Jacksonville. I don't know, you know, some days are just Florida, Florida, some years just Florida, Georgia. Haven't looked to see which way they have it this year. They go back and forth. But that game, the forecast looks pretty good for that. Maybe a passing shower, but be careful at the beaches. But otherwise, looking pretty good. I mean, it's going to be pretty warm for Halloween night. I don't want to jump over that too much. You know, a little warmer than normal, but at least you don't have to bundle up. I mean, this is nice weather, to be quite honest. I know some folks wanted a little chillier. So it's pretty nice weather, and I mean, eventually we do need, you know, maybe rain here and there. We had a little, though, on that Tuesday, so that was good to see where we're at here in Bradford County. About 1/3 of an inch of rain here falling as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. You know, you can see, though, I mean, you know, not a bad forecast. I mean, you know, at least we don't have any, you know, tropics threats here in the next 7 days. I mean, above average, sure, with these temperatures. I mean, you know, instead of 76, 77, you're sitting at 84, 85. And, you know, instead of 58, 54, you know, give or take, you're sitting in the low to mid 60s. But it's not too bad, quite honestly, here as we're tracking things, as we're looking at things, as we're giving you the latest weather information. I mean, you know, you take that over a hurricane any day of the week, I would say. So that's definitely the storyline there, as we give you the very latest information to protect you, your friends, and your family. So let me see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers here at home. I know you can kind of see here, just giving you that look at things here, and just trying to keep you guys up to date as we're really late here on with this, but I wanted to get that latest look at the SPC outlook and the like there, you know, the risk of strong tornadoes out toward areas in the Midwest later on that Wednesday. So stay aware, and if we have, you know, like a tornado emergency or, you know, something really significant, we'll break in on the different platforms as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully things don't get to that level, but I will be on top of things here just in case. So, you know, just trying to make sure the scenario here is monitored. I know, you know, areas like Bartlesville in Oklahoma, and let me get back to the map so I can see what I'm talking about, but it's just the general vicinity. But so you see, this is where we have that risk of, you know, strong tornadoes here based on the hatched area. So what this is pretty much a hatched area. So the Storm Prediction Center, they have their outlooks, and if you see it online, it'll be hatched on the map here. But on here, it shows up a little bit differently. You know, in that brownish color, it's where an isolated strong tornado 2 or 3 could develop. You know, so in the region, you know, it could be outside of this just barely, you never know, but Hominy, Oklahoma, Bartlesville, gotta be careful. And then up toward areas like Winfield in Kansas, Howard, over toward Burlington, Emporia, Garnett, Topeka. You know, you see Manhattan on here. Zoom in a little bit so that's Kansas State, the Wildcats in the Big 12 Conference. And then in Lawrence, Kansas, that's the University of Kansas Jayhawks, also in the Big 12. And they're not playing football on Wednesday night there or anything like that. But the point being is, those areas of reference could have some significant severe weather. Again, this is something that, isn't like, the highest in type of risk or anything, but, something a little bit more reminiscent of maybe April or May. Again, shouldn't quite be hopeful at that level, but still got to be aware here because this could catch folks off guard. So that's why I'm talking about a little bit more, carefully than maybe I would if it's a different time of year. You expected a little bit more, but we haven't had much of this, and all of a sudden it kind of comes up on you as a fairly substantial risk here. So gotta be careful. You see Holton, Kansas. I mean, you're kind of in that second severe of the season at this point too, but generally in this part of the country that wouldn't be as big of a deal. I know toward like Alabama, you can get severe weather November, December. That can be a pretty big deal, even toward our area for some, in some cases. But as you see, St. Joseph, Missouri, that's even in the Falls City, Nebraska there. But again, it could be in or out of this by a little. If we even get something to that level, maybe we get lucky and don't get one of them. But you see the tornado risk here. This is pretty broad, 5% risk here. We could have a tornado watch. They had some, destructive, deadly tornadoes earlier on this year toward North Texas. This is not a huge risk, but still got to be aware. Gainesville, Texas, Sherman could get a tornado watch in that region. Bonham there, Paris, Clarksville, Hugo in Oklahoma, Atoka there, Ardmore, Poles Valley, Ada. You see areas there, Soldier Ranch, Shawnee, even Oklahoma City. It's happened before this time of year. It's just something I want to play up a little bit more right now because it is, not as often late October, or at least it's not Halloween night with this risk maximized, and that'd be more of a concern even. And at this point, we're not seeing, this type of risk toward election day. There could be some threats of severe weather, though, as we look there closer in that period. Hopefully not that day, but we'll monitor it here. I know. But you see Guthrie, Oklahoma, Stillwater's Oklahoma State University, of course, University of Oklahoma there, and Norman. They're under, this 2 out of 5 risk here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, trying to give you the very latest here on what's happening. So just trying to kind of, let you guys know here of this potential. Again, could have some severe weather next week too, but hopefully it doesn't coincide there, with the election day. I know we're going to, plan to be off next Tuesday in terms of weather coverage unless, we have an issue, maybe if it's severe weather to the Midwest, but probably more so is if we had a, local concern about the tropics later on. Now we may do an update late Tuesday. We're going to be on this Thursday, though, so make sure you tune in then, and we'll be on later today now, later on that Wednesday, if we need to be, for the tornado risk there and that, brownest color, maximize, and this is the area where we could have an isolated EF2 or stronger tornado. I mean, this threat starts to happen more in the fall months, the winter months further south, the spring months. It's just a little bit, something where you're not thinking about it and feel like you could get caught off guard because it's kind of a pattern shift here to some degree. So, in these parts of the country, not our local area, but, getting in there a little bit of Nebraska, little Missouri, so around Kansas City and St. Joseph. And then you see areas in Kansas there, Manhattan, Topeka, Lawrence. You can see Emporia. I don't know how you pronounce that exactly in Kansas. It could be Autorado or Laredo, but there you go. East of Wichita. Wichita is, covered area, some of them in that, threat of a strong tornado. So just got to be careful in northern Oklahoma in there. We'll keep our eyes on it here in the weather center. So I think that's pretty much going to do it for tonight here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, as we're trying to keep you guys safe and informed. I know we're always on the different platforms if and as is necessary. Facebook, KC Cloud WX, Cloud Weather, Twitter /X at Cloud KC, YouTube at Cloud Weather, Twitch Cloud Weather, and then cloudweather.com. So again, just trying to keep you guys informed there on all the different platforms as we're tracking things. It's been a crazy year in terms of the weather. as we're tracking things. It's been a sad year in a lot of ways. I mean, one of those we've talked about it here on the broadcast, especially earlier on in the year. But I want to bring it up again since it's this past the 6 month mark now. Just something that's that hard to believe how it happened. But my father passing away there at the age of 85 in April there. Just crazy to have it happen like that. It happened pretty suddenly and unexpectedly. So just it was a situation where I'm gonna always miss him as we're looking at things and just bringing things back toward that Doppler technology. As we're tracking things here toward the Weather Center. Have a great night. I'll be back here on Thursday with more weather information, unless we need to break back in later today in terms of some of those severe weather conditions maybe getting out of hand toward the Midwest, and we'll have you covered here if that is warranted.